You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
All right, welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast. On this episode, I am joined by a guest host as we analyze and break down a film to discover what works and what doesn't. All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Geoffrey D. Calhoun, of course, joined with story analyst at WeFixYourScript.com, Kristy Leigh Lussier. Thanks for being with us.
I'm always happy to be here.
All right, so today we are covering The Tomorrow War, which is an Amazon Prime original.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'm gonna hit you with that log line. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's do it.
A family man is drafted to fight in a future war where the fate of humanity relies on his ability to confront the past. Look at that. All right, what's your first thoughts?
I liked it. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was good. I love Chris Pratt, so I'm always a big proponent of him. I think he's just got such great charisma that on screen, and he can do really well.
You know, he carries the scene really well. And then they casted Betty Gilpin as his wife, whom I think she's fantastic. I think she's a scene stealer. I feel that she was kind of critically underused in this film.
Oh,
but,
okay. Yeah.
She is awesome. I don't know if you've ever seen The Hunt, but if you've seen The Hunt, she's amazing in that.
Yep.
And of course she was in Glow. But yeah, I think Chris Pratt, he's got the action hero lead down. This is an original character. It doesn't feel like Star-Lord, which is nice to see. You know, he's not like a one-note actor.
Right, for sure.
So I think concept-wise, this is a strong concept, and I can see how it got, pushed to the phase of being filmed. Because have you ever seen a movie where they come back in the past to have their grandparents fight a war in the future against aliens? I mean, that's pretty original.
I mean, other than Terminator, sure. It gave me such Terminator vibes. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be very transparent. It was along that aspect, but it went in a different direction. It kind of took it to a different level.
I feel you on that. I guess from the perspective I'm pulling is that they transport them into the future, which I thought was kind of neat. So you have like people from the past going into the future and then fighting the war. But I could totally see where you're pulling vibes there of whatever kind of influence they had when they were making this thing.
Right. Because essentially you have to send people from the future to the past to warn them what's coming.
Right. And then and then you conscript people in the past and put them in the future. And it's wild. Mm-hmm. So, but thematically we're looking at really, this is about parent-child dynamics. This is about I don't want to say neglect as much as it's about abandonment. And that definitely plays out thematically with the characters. Chris Pratt is a father who's struggling. He's a loving husband, a loving father. But it is revealed throughout the story that he is going to become like his father, who left when he was a child.
Right.
So they kind of run that through line. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed how they explored it. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed how they paired that with the sub theme of second chances, which was great, because you saw that in supporting characters as well. There was one character who was a coward, who hid in fear, and then later on he gets a second chance a hero.
Right. Yeah.
Same with jacked up J.K. Simmons. He gets a second chance. So I like the idea of second chances. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting with how they did it with, a number of characters in that regard. And what I found was really neat too was, this idea that, and spoilers, obviously spoilers, but that everybody that they were kind of looking to send forward was already dead. So they were kind of making it this, like, you die anyway, but then it's this almost redemption for them to feel like, okay, now I know when I'm going to die. So it is my second chance to maybe change my own future versus, so I thought that was really, really neat.
I think they were trying to build into the theme a little bit as much as they could leverage it. But I also feel they are just trying to cover plot holes. When it comes to time travel, it's so difficult to wrap your head around that type of a dynamic. And then you start getting into, plot hole fever. I mean, because at this point, this story makes sense if you look at time as linear. If you look at time as linear, then what they're doing in this script makes sense. If you don't look at time as linear, this script doesn't hold salt.
No, for sure.
They try and explain that real quick in a line, like, oh, well, time works this way. And you're like, okay, these are the rules of this movie. Yes. I have to suspend my own belief of time in order to get behind this concept.
That was interesting because we had said that earlier where we were like, well, why don't they just play with the time aspect? Why is it 1-to-1? Yeah. And then when they explained it that way, we were like, okay, well,
the buoy system.
Yep, exactly. So here we are now, and this is where we move forward.
But then I go, well, how did they build the first buoy?
I know, right?
so I was like, okay, I got to stop.
Messes with you.
Just stop. Okay, I don't want to go there. Let's just, all right.
Just keep going. Yeah.
They've laid out the rules. We're gonna stick with it. Let's watch Chris Pratt shoot some aliens. So
yes, for sure.
So I had a concern about his character because I felt thematically, and I haven't really seen this as an issue before. Usually I run into clients or students, or even I see films where thematically it's always really light. And so then we work on building it. Here, the theme wasn't, it wasn't too heavy, it wasn't too light, but it was conflicting with itself on how they were trying to sell the characters. And I thought that was a really interesting issue. And I actually wanted to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, well, with Chris Pratt's character, what was
so Chris Pratt's character, the revelation is that he's going to end up be like his father, where he's going to run out on his family. He's going to abandon his family, which builds into the theme, right? Abandoning them as a father figure, leaving them on their own, which happened to him as a child, which is why he hates his dad. So it's that kind of the family history of abuse, cycle of abuse, basically that he's continuing, right?
Sure.
So with that, we have a character that this is a big budget action movie. It's Chris Pratt. We want him to be likable. So how do we make that guy come off as a character who is going to eventually leave his daughter? Because we're not introduced to that character. We meet Chris Pratt as a loving husband, as a loving father, as a guy struggling to get a job. And the only hint we get of a potential of a guy that might leave his family is when he kicks the trash can.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he doesn't get the job.
Right.
And for me, I needed more.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't sound to me like a guy who's going to leave his family.
That was the same exact thing that I had, which was like, I mean, I understand that they were establishing at a sense where he was feeling like, I'm not doing anything great with my life. I'm meant to do something more. Right. But to me, that didn't correlate to, I'm so miserable that eventually I would just up and leave my family.
Yeah. No, I get it. So to me, the guy that doesn't get the job and realizes he's not being utilized in life and he's not finding his dreams.
Right.
After he gets kicked down, off that edge for the 50th time, and he goes in the house, that's not the guy that sits in the couch and cradles his daughter and tells her about the future. This is the guy that I would say sees his wife, sees his daughter as they beckon him towards them, and then ignores them.
Yeah.
He goes into his office, he goes into the garage, or leaves the house and has to be alone and shutters himself off from the world as he's preparing to, slowly pull himself away from these relationships. But here's the problem. You can't do that with a Chris Pratt action hero in a movie that's a blockbuster that you want to get everybody behind this character. So I thought it was a really interesting dichotomy.
That's a very good point. And I am 100% same, where you feel like, wait, this character's too likable, or we've already kind of attached to him in a sense that we're rooting for him and he's very likable. So to hear that, he just up and leaves, it won't work. It won't work. Yeah.
It won't make him likable. So that comes down to like the likability factor.
Right.
Which is the argument. Should we make a character likable? Right. Mm-hmm. Or should we make a character that the decisions that they make sense and inform who they are? So I think there's a balance that we could have hit there. It doesn't have to be one. It doesn't have to be the other. Sure. I would have liked to have seen him go further than kicking a garbage can. I know we're harping on this opening scene, but this really does set up the entire movie and his whole arc.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So then, suggestion wise, or in my thought process would be like later on when they show a year later and he's in the science classroom and then he comes home and that kind of thing. I, set up to where he's already starting to be distant and pull away.
Yeah.
Throughout that time frame. And then that gives a little more sense of, okay, this makes
I think that's a good elegant solution.
Yeah.
So that we see maybe he's not as interested in the family. Maybe he's pulling away from the daughter and he's starting to kind of hit that wallow phase. Would have been a very great character development for him. So I think it's a really good solution. J.K. Simmons' character, not in the film much, but a great subplot and really kind of reinforces the parent dynamic there. The fact that he's jacked up and huge is just awesome. I'm sorry. The guy is so good.
He's so good at anything.
He was in a TV show called Counterpart, which I think only made it 1 or 2 seasons. And it was an amazing show. And it didn't get renewed. And he played both leads, which I thought, this guy, he is so talented.
Oh, he is. Just, hands down, for sure.
It was really well casted. And I enjoyed all of the different characters, like the gentleman that you discover, he has cancer and he's dying. He wants his life to be in his own hands. That's another form of second chances.
For sure.
So they really played it out. How did you feel about the twist of Yvonne Strosky's being his grown-up daughter?
Being his daughter. I kind of almost expected it or kind of saw it coming. There was this sense of like, he has to be there for a reason. Even before she kind of leads to that element, the whole sequence where they bring him to the MEPS office and he sits there and they're talking to him and he's just like, why are you asking me all these questions? Why are you doing this whole thing? It felt like he was selected for a purpose. Like there was a reason.
Absolutely.
So we were leading towards, there's a specific goal in mind with his character going in this way.
It's a twist that you see coming. It's not too big of a surprise.
Right.
And structure wise, it comes right after midpoint where, the group is getting killed. They're all getting slaughtered. We see him risking everybody's lives to save a few, which, again, that gets us behind him as the action hero character we can all empathize with. But yet somebody who still needs to learn sacrifice. And then right after that, we get the heart plot, and it's not going to be Betty Gilpin because we don't really get much of her. It's going to have to be his daughter. Right. But it's the grown-up version. So I like that kind of a character reversal. I thought it was good. And the scenes they had together, I felt were strong.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I loved that the foreshadowing of her as a little girl, not only just really interested in science, but the fact that she's talking about, finding a vaccine and digging in the dirt to, it was just really cool because it really did loop everything around and it felt complete. It felt like a solid arc there.
It was super adorable. I really loved it. And I enjoyed the relationship that they formed rather quickly, but it was there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then coming to the big moment where she dies and he sees her die, and then they come back home and he has PTSD. I mean, he has that 1,000-mile stare, and we only got a little bit of a hint of that. I actually wanted more of it, but I was glad to actually see it because how many films do you not see that?
Oh, so many. But then, J.K. Simmons' character was talking about it too when he came back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And that there was this you don't get it. You don't understand that there was more than just, he was, remarking on his PTSD after the war.
Yeah.
And so it was the same. It was that loop around again.
It is. And it is. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but my father was a Vietnam vet. And
so was mine.
Yeah, and he suffered. I mean, I witnessed it firsthand and watched the trials that he went through, and how it afflicts their personality like that.
Oh, for
and
sure.
So I mean, so J.K. Simmons' character was coming really from a place of truth.
Right.
It's just an inconvenient truth.
Yes, exactly.
And so I was really glad to see that they added that kind of depth to him. It was absolutely beautiful. And he carried those scenes. My God.
Oh, I know.
They have so many scene stealers in this film, which you don't expect in a streaming original, but no, they really do.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because we were remarking, like, how would this have felt if we saw it in a theater?
Oh, really?
It this sense of like, that's one of those films where you almost want to see it in the theater. Yeah. It's just so big and has this fantastical kind of feel that how would that have felt if you didn't see it on the big screen or on the small screen and saw it on a big screen? I
think it would have held up. I think it would have been powerful.
For sure.
I think you would have been talking about it in the parking lot, on the way to the car. Absolutely. No, I totally think it definitely could have been. Or I don't know if they do play it in theaters right now, but definitely is a big blockbuster. Everybody talked about the very ending where they find the spaceship and everybody was screaming how it was influenced by aliens, and some people were in an uproar about it because it just felt out of place. And I think what they mean is that this film just kind of it pulled on a lot of different genre strings.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. It was sci-fi, it was action, it was all those things combined. Comedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it had a mold of all of that.
Yeah. It had some horror in there, and you can see, you can see the influences, right? Like you said earlier, it's like Terminator meets Aliens, right?
Yes.
So I think
it's an homage to James Cameron. Right?
Definitely inspired by.
Inspired by something. Yeah.
So I think when it runs into something like this, they played real heavy on the surprise aspect of it being aliens that are there in a ship, not from a meteorite or whatever they were suspecting happened. And so that's why I understand the justification for all of that. And they were really dependent on the surprise factor, the twists, to help with the stakes. And so I think if we had a hint earlier on of that being about a spaceship, or the colonies looked spaceship-like when they were underground, that could have made more sense to allow people to have that more natural of a progression instead of just being what they felt was like slammed in the face with a new genre.
But because they just basically said, like, we don't know where it came from, we know nothing about it. It was maybe too much in terms of not alluding to that, right?
Right. Yeah. They sacrificed the surprise, or actually they used the surprise to up the stakes, but the sacrifice there is a risk of alienating the audience again by just using a blender of genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, this episode is actually brought to you by The Successful Screenwriter, because I want people to go out there and check out our website. On our website, we have screenplays of some of the biggest Hollywood movies out there you can download for free. We've got a huge list of recommended books. We've got videos on there of all of our interviews and seminars you could download. So thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com. And Kristy, check this out. If they sign up for the newsletter, not only do they get a copy of the book, The Guide for Every Screenwriter, which, happens to be a bestseller. But also they will get weekly gigs sent to them from one of our sponsors at Inktip.
Yep. Free leads, guys. Like, it's totally worth it.
Thank you. Just hit thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com. And Kristy, thanks so much for being on with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share in your social media, where you can tag us at The Successful Screenwriter.